Welcome to the Andy Staples Show, SEC Media Days edition here in Atlanta. Seth Emerson, our Georgia beat writer, joins me. The Bulldogs not in Atlanta yet, but the commissioner of the SEC, Greg Sankey, was on the stage on Monday, and very interesting attitude coming from Greg Sankey. Seth, it seemed like a guy who is in a good spot.
I've covered him since he became commissioner and was covering the league when he was still the associate commissioner. I've, like you, had one-on-ones with him, talked with him. I know him well, or at least I know how he speaks. And to me, the way he handled the expansion questions today was noteworthy because he had a chance to say, we're at 16, we're good. We don't care what other conferences do, blah, blah, blah. He did say we're at 16 and we're happy to be we're going to be at 16. We're happy to stay at 16, but he did not say we absolutely will not. He actually said we're listening, we're engaging.
Right, people are calling.
Right,
and it's sort of like the Big Ten and the SEC are both in this position where everybody would like to be part of them if they're not part of them right now. So it is an enviable position to be in. Both leagues have built up a product that everybody wants to be part of. So
and have a TV contract, and they're stable. I think that's Brian Kelly touched on that. It's musical chairs, and no one wants to be left out, and everyone's scared to be left out of it. And really, unless you're in the Big Ten or the SEC or you are Notre Dame, right now you're looking around going, where's this going to end up?
Yeah, Notre Dame's the interesting one to me, Seth, because I ended up writing about Greg Sankey and the playoff because I thought it was interesting that 7 weeks ago at SEC spring meetings, he seemed to be sounding an alarm. There is nothing past 2025. Hey, got to get together, got to get this figured out, need to know what's going on, need to make a decision. He was pretty zen when asked about the playoff on Monday. Like, there's time. It'll get figured out, which suggests to me that whatever resistance there was before seems to be fading away as leagues realize, wait a second, we don't have any leverage here if we aren't the Big Ten or the SEC.
But the pressure was there to have conference access with some guarantee, and so the 12-team, 6 at-large, which increases the at-large access, and 6 conference qualifiers, not automatic qualifiers, but the guarantee to the 6 best conference champions, was a really good balancing outcome. But things have changed, and I was clear back in January when we walked away from the conversation that we as a conference weren't unanimous in our support. I had, as commissioner, moved people forward to the point we were supportive as a league. And if we're going to go back to square one, then we're going to take a step back from the model introduced and rethink the approach. Number of teams, whether there should be any guarantee for conference champions at all. Just earn your way in. There's something that's healthy competitively about that and creates expectations and support around programs. Where we go, we'll see. We've had one initial conversation in late June. I walked into that meeting not very optimistic about the ability to talk through issues, and I walked out much more positive about the path forward than when I walked in. And there's a lot of work to do. We have time and we'll use it. And it's the same type of issues that you've heard, AQ or no AQ, how many teams, what's the relationship to the bowls, when do we play these games on a calendar. We really need to look at that more deeply than we did in the previous iteration. So we'll see how it goes. But those are the realities. But I'd be fine with no AQs, whether it's 4 like we have now. It's a model that's worked, 8, 12, but the inclusion of conference champion access was I thought an effective compromise at a 12-team playoff.
Right, and obviously the ACC especially, and maybe the Pac-12 especially. I think you know more about the machinations behind the scenes. Like, did the Pac-12's new commissioner shoot himself in the foot, or was he just put in a bad position, whatever?
Right.
But these guys, they needed to go along. Maybe the ACC will still end up okay here. They need to stabilize everything.
They still have good brands. They have good teams. Yeah.
But the Big Ten is kind of saying, hey, we're in the SEC's position now, and the SEC's saying we've been in this position. We'll make our own playoff if we have to. There's no playoff after 2024?
2025.
2025. Like after that. Now, I think we all expect there's going to they're going to figure this out. But in all this uncertainty, like I said, unless you're in the SEC or the Big Ten or you're Notre Dame, you don't know what's happening. And so the SEC and Greg Sankey have leverage. Like the Big Ten answered the SEC's move on Texas and Oklahoma, but it did not decrease, in my mind, the SEC's leverage.
No, and the Big Ten has equal amounts of leverage. Mm-hmm. And you can say, oh, well, they might be at odds, and you might be able to form an alliance. Oh, wait, I used the A word again.
Can't use that word anymore.
Yeah. But it doesn't matter because ultimately the Big Ten and the SEC kind of want the same things.
Everybody's better off having one playoff together.
Yeah.
I would argue we're better off in a world where there's more than two super conferences.
I would agree with that. And I think the Big Ten and the SEC would be smart to make sure there is a way to include everybody else.
Right.
Now, how you get to that is the question. Because I think if you ask Greg Sankey, he'd be all for as many at-large spots as possible. Mm-hmm. I think the commissioners of the other leagues would be like, no, can we get some automatic qualifying spots in here just to make sure it's not all Big Ten and all SEC? But, I think about this because, remember, realignment's not always about quality on the field. Mm-hmm. It's about what you bring to the balance sheet, whether it's bringing markets, whether it's bringing eyeballs because you're a big brand. But I don't think Clemson's going to stop being good because these teams move to the Big Ten and these teams move to the SEC. I don't think Oregon's going to stop being good, whether Oregon's in the Pac-10 or some other conference or they get absorbed somewhere else. I don't think Washington will stay down forever. They could be good again. Utah has been very good. Oklahoma State has been good. Baylor has been really good. Those are all programs I feel like can make a playoff if you're doing an 8-team or a 12-team. Even if you just said no conference champions guaranteed anything, just the top 8, top 12 get in, they're still getting in. And I think that's better for the game because it keeps all those people engaged still.
Well, isn't this the reason that they wanted to go to a 12-team playoff?
Yeah.
Because the same teams were contending for only 4 spots, and when there's only 4 spots and people have stopped caring about bowls and which bowls you go to, you need to keep more fan bases engaged.
Yeah.
So that's a good thing to do. But now if you go to super conferences, you're starting to shut out a bunch of teams. Like if you're not in one of these super conferences, you're out. Well, the lifeline that Greg Sankey and the SEC and I guess probably the Big Ten at this point still want to give everyone else is we'll get you a 12-team playoff. I mean, I don't want to speak for our friends who cover the Big Ten, and you probably know, but the SEC all along has been rather, I think, altruistic on this.
Right. They don't
in
need
the beginning.
12.
Yeah, well,
8 would be fine with them as long as it's top 8.
I mean, I live in Athens, Georgia, and the team in my town that I cover most of the time has now played 2 national championship games against another team in the SEC, the same team. But it's just better for everybody that there's 12 and it's a great number, and the conferences that shot themselves in the foot by being against it are the ones that are in danger of being shut out.
It is crazy, though. What were they thinking? Like, when you go back to it, why did George Kliavkoff talk to Nicole Auerbach last month and said, oh, well, they shouldn't have announced it. They should have worked through the issue. But it doesn't matter if it's the thing you need. It doesn't matter if it's been announced or not.
Well,
it either is or isn't the thing you need.
Was it hurt feelings over the Texas-Oklahoma thing, which now I'll say this. I get that a little bit. I've asked.
You kind of freak out a little bit. Like, was there an ulterior motive?
Right.
Was there something behind this?
Right.
But the ACC one, they never did give a legitimate reason for wanting to hold it up.
The TV being part of it, like is the SEC driving this?
But the ACC is ESPN all the way.
Yeah.
Like, they wouldn't have any disagreement with the SEC over that.
Was the ACC and Jim Phillips were they holding it up because they wanted it as a way to get Notre Dame to kind of force them in?
Maybe. I mean,
they wanted 8.
Yeah.
With the thinking being Notre Dame.
Yeah.
Now, we were saying at the time that didn't make much sense.
Right.
And now, especially, it doesn't. Like, I think that at this point, the ACC has to crawl to everyone and beg, let's get back to 12.
Well, and let me ask you this. So, maybe there are all automatic qualifying spots. Now, I remember talking about Bowlesby in Las Vegas in December, and he said the reason that the Big 12 was against codifying which leagues got the the automatic spots. He's like, that'll get us dragged before Congress. Like that's why they were against it. That's why Sankey was against it. Those guys didn't understand why Kevin Warren from the Big Ten was like, well, no, you got to say which 5 leagues get or which 6 leagues. No, you don't. You don't have to say that. And the Big Ten really doesn't need to say that. There's no scenario in the universe where the Big Ten champ doesn't get in.
No, I mean, I don't get it. I did get that some people would be upset at Greg Sankey and thinking that he was doing something duplicitous.
Yes.
I get that part, but then at that point you kind of have to get over it.
Or just think through all the various machinations and go, okay, what are they getting out of this? What's the hidden agenda here?
Right.
And if you go through it and you can't find a hidden agenda, then you probably go with the thing that helps you the most. And that's what blows my mind about this. I don't think UCLA and USC stay in the Pac-12 if there's a 12-team playoff and the 6 highest-ranked conference champs get in. Like, that all but guarantees the Pac-12's champ a spot in the playoff, but I don't think that would have kept them there.
You don't, like, I mean, I guess I'm looking at it strictly from a competitive standpoint, which is
the money's just so huge in the Big Ten. I don't think you're going to say no to that just because that one circumstance changed. But it couldn't have hurt your chances of keeping them.
Might have given them a better shot than it ended up that they did. Yeah, well, all right, so where do you think this goes? I guess the question is the cart before the horse before the cart. What's going to happen here? Are they going to come together and decide on a playoff situation format before there's more expansion movements, or is there a sense that they need to let some of this realignment stuff settle out first?
I feel like they need to let some of it settle out to have some idea of what they're doing. Now, the thing is, and Greg Sankey said they had some time, which was, again, a little bit different than what he'd said in the past. And they do have some time. Because logistically, if you're going to wind up talking through the logistics of this thing, you're talking about at least a 6 to 9 month process, probably more like a year-long process. You would think by a year from now, some of the dust will have settled from a realignment standpoint. Now, the one piece of realignment that doesn't get settled, because I think what happens with the playoff discussion will influence it, is Notre Dame.
I think, I mean, I've seen Pete Sampson, our colleague who's as plugged in as anybody there, talk a little bit more openly about the possibility that Notre Dame will join a conference.
Yeah.
So I defer to Pete. I've been so wrong on realignment predictions anyway, but my own sense from afar is that I'll believe Notre Dame will join a conference the day they do.
I feel like this is going to force them into it ultimately, but if I'm them, I'm going to sit there and wait and see what happens with the playoff, because let's say it's a playoff scenario where there's 8 at-larges, 4 automatic qualifying spots. Because, again, does there need to be 6 if there are only 2 power conferences?
So if we're talking 4 automatic qualifying spots, we're talking SEC,
the 4
Big
highest
10,
ranked. It doesn't have to be set to a league, but yeah.
All right. Yeah.
So, but in theory, realistically, we're talking that's going to be the SEC and the Big 10, and then 2 other leagues, whether that's the ACC and the Big 12, the ACC and the Pac-12. We don't know what that's going to look like.
It feels like, Andy, we're a little bit doomed as far as living in a world of 5 regional conferences. It feels like the Big Ten has killed that by
we got to get our minds out of that space, because that's not the future.
My hope, as someone who thinks that regionalism and traditions and basically having things spread out a little bit more, is that the ACC will be okay.
Yeah.
I don't know if that means Notre Dame joining it or Notre Dame just recommitting to independence but staying in the ACC under their current arrangement.
Well, that's what I was going to ask. If you have 8 at-large spots, does Notre Dame need to join a conference?
I don't think so.
They can still write their unless one of the power conferences blackballs them, which again, kind of how that all started was the proto Big Ten, the Western
Which would
Conference.
Be shooting yourself in the foot.
But I don't think they would do that now. And like, of course, if Notre Dame comes to you and says, we would like to play a home and home with you, whoever you are, SEC member, Big Ten member, Big 12, whatever, you're going to say yes. They're going to fill your stadium the year they come.
Well, and just looking at who's available and who's out there, I know we get into the parlor game that isn't realistic and whatever, but like we started this out by you were talking about Oregon's out there, Washington's out there, Clemson's out there, Florida State, Miami. There's you want to get to Virginia Tech. North Carolina is not super strong football-wise, but they're still a brand. There are still good brands, historic programs out there that it's spread out enough, and like the SEC still has, God bless you, Mississippi State and Vanderbilt.
Right.
And the Big Ten has, they have Northwestern, which got, I don't know if Stewart's going to, fire me for mentioning them in the same breath, but
he might.
Maybe Nicole and the Northwestern
but
Mafia.
But in Illinois.
All right, I'll throw Maryland in there, okay?
There you go.
Yeah,
You're our alma mater, absolutely.
Right. Anyway, there are enough lower tier, lesser programs in those two super conferences and enough bigger, good programs that are still out there, not in those, that I think there's enough to go around that we will still have 4 semi-regional conferences that are strong enough but is that going to have to settle out first before, like, are we going to have an absolutely the ACC's okay and the Pac-12, Big 12 thing to settle?
Right.
That has to happen first, and will that happen in the next 6 to 9 months and then have a playoff decision?
It feels like the Big 12, Pac-12 thing has to decide itself at some point.
And that's going to be eat or get eaten
This
situation.
calendar year, I would think. Like, one has to take from the other.
They can't just keep adding. Like, the Pac-12 can't just say, all right, well, we lost USC, UCLA, so we're going to add San Diego State and
maybe they could. What if they just said, we'll be 10? We got Oregon and Washington's 10 polls.
Yeah.
We'll be 10. We'll split it 10 ways. That probably, from a monetary standpoint, isn't that different.
You would always
than the
feel
Big 12 deal.
worried that Oregon and Washington could get poached. On the other hand,
and then you're done.
On the other hand, by adding San Diego State or UNLV, like, you're diluting.
I don't think
payout.
I think staying 10 would make sense. But the question is, would Oregon and Washington be willing to even commit? That's where I think the Big 12 has some leverage there. They don't have to care about that. They can take somebody else from the Pac-12 and say, hey, look, we don't intend to go anywhere. None of our people are getting offered they're not going anywhere.
Yeah.
So I don't know whether it's the Arizona schools, Utah and Colorado, like Oklahoma State, Baylor, Texas Tech, TCU, we're here. We're staying here. We're going to be a league.
And those are the programs that could still benefit from all this. Maybe they are getting left behind by Oklahoma and Texas, but if you're still in those conferences and it settles out and they get a 12-team playoff, this is what we were saying all along. It would benefit was programs like that.
Absolutely.
That are never going to make a 4-team playoff, although Oklahoma State was close.
Well, that's the thing. Oklahoma State and Baylor probably both make it last year.
Yeah, but those are programs that are going to only rarely contend for a 4-team playoff, but they'll get into a 12-team playoff. And we've all seen what happens in the NCAA tournament in basketball.
Yeah.
Like, Gonzaga gets in and then slowly, keeps winning. And
right.
Then
when Gonzaga won, it used to be an upset.
Yeah.
Now they're expected to win.
And then what Bruce Pearl did at Auburn, like, he got them in the tournament, and then they, before you know it, they're in the Final Four. Like, it's you build yourself, and that's how you build your brand.
Yeah.
Is through a 12-team playoff, whereas a 4-team playoff locks almost everybody out.
Well, and it's interesting because I used to think the 8-team would be the best one because it was still a very tough ticket. It was hard to get into.
Yeah.
But I think they maybe they did a little too good a job selling the 12-team to me because I look at it and I go, okay, number 12 can beat number 5. And that's more interesting. Like, I don't want to see number 8 get waxed by number 1.
Right.
And I definitely don't want to see number 16 get waxed by number 1.
You want to reward the top 4 for having a good season.
Right. So you give and then you incentivize the highly ranked teams at the end of the season to stay highly ranked.
You're also not taking away what has made college football what it is. Like, college football has not been made what it is because of only the top 2 making the championship or whatever. Like, it's the 12 out of 131 teams is still – all right, take that out of it. What's the math on however many are in the Power 5 now? I did this actually in a column.
65.
12 out of 65 is still less than, say, the NFL.
Yes. It's still less.
It still
it's
means
still less
something.
in number than the NFL. 14 teams make the playoff now.
It still means something to make the college football playoff when it's 12 teams. I think you are taking something away from what made college football great if you get the regionalism out of there.
Yeah, and I think that's a way to keep the regionalism in it. If you'd make it where it's not just the Big Ten and the SEC.
Yes.
So
yes.
Now I think you can do that without a bunch of automatic qualifiers. Because I do think it's possible to keep playing good football.
Because those teams are playing each other in the conference, so they're beating each other up.
Yeah, and they're going to play non-conference games, and there's still going to be a chance for them to play some Big Ten teams and some SEC teams and show in the pre-conference season what they can do.
Yeah.
So, it's going to be very interesting, though, because the chicken-egg part of it is fascinating to me because I feel like you got to kind of know.
But has the ACC, are the ACC and whatever's emerges from the Pac-12, Big 12, are they now so scared that they come before realignment settles? They come running back to the negotiating team.
We'll take it.
Because before with the 12-team playoff, it was, you kind of knew the SEC was going to get 3 or 4 every year, and the Big 10 was going to get 2 or 3, and everyone else was fighting it out. Now it's going to be the Big 10 and the SEC saying,
Well, right. If you're those other schools, you're like, oh God.
Yeah.
Now those 4 spots that aren't going to go to the Big Ten or the SEC, we need those. Please let us have those.
I think the ACC and the Big Pac-12, whatever,
the
are
Pac
coming
Big
back
12,
and they're
the
like,
2-pack.
Just get us a 12-team playoffs. Guarantee us 1 spot somehow, but also enough at-larges that our second-best team has a chance too.
Well, and that's the thing. If you have 4 AQs, if there is consolidation out there, then I do think you probably have a situation where it feels like everybody has a chance.
And that's the beauty of the NCAA tournament.
Yep.
College basketball has lost a lot of interest over the years, but what still gets great ratings is the NCAA tournament and March Madness in general, those conference tournament games, because when the season starts, everybody has a chance.
Yep. Win
your conference, you get in.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the story you wrote, Seth. You're talking about where the SEC is in terms of membership. Texas and Oklahoma are on the way. They don't need to do anything.
No.
Obviously, there's some folks that might want to come. Let's power rank these schools.
Yeah.
If Notre Dame wants to come, they're in, right? They're in. No question.
And as I pointed out, as we were talking about earlier, a guy who spoke Monday deserves a lot of credit for that, Brian Kelly.
Yeah.
Because he took over the Charlie Weiss shattered remains of that Notre Dame program, and he turned them into a nationally relevant program again.
They'd already be in a conference, I think,
yeah.
if they had not improved dramatically.
People joke
under
about
Brian Kelly,
and crack on Notre Dame for how they looked. They've looked whenever they've gone in the playoffs. But as someone who's covered 2 Georgia-Notre Dame games where Notre Dame gave Georgia all they could, Notre Dame got that respect back.
Right. And I have a problem when you say, well, look, Clemson crushed Notre Dame. No. That year, Clemson beat Alabama by more than it beat Notre Dame in the playoff. And Notre Dame gave Alabama about as much trouble as Ohio State gave Alabama in the 2020 season.
Much like Cincinnati actually played Alabama closer than Michigan played Georgia in the semis this year.
Right. So it is not – I don't think the results of the playoff games mean that
and the brand, just forget it. Notre Dame's won.
Yeah.
Number 2, I say North Carolina. What do you say?
Well, I say North Carolina because the SEC has a strong cable channel that can still charge more money if they expand the footprint. But I do think that is a bit short-term thinking because I don't think that is going to be the way money gets made in television for much longer. Mm-hmm. I think a bigger brand, a Clemson or a Florida State, long-term is the better choice.
I wonder about Florida State long-term, wonder about Clemson. I mean, Clemson had some years in the wilderness. Before Dabo got them going. And Florida State is in the wilderness.
In the wilderness. I do feel like if Florida State got the money infusion and they were playing from the same deck as the SEC and the Big 12 schools, my guess is they'd be pretty good.
Yeah. I mean, I get that we don't live in 2009 anymore, and this isn't about cable subscribers, but I think in terms of SEC presidents, I think they'd love to get North Carolina for the brand and for the academics, and then I think they'd love to get Virginia
geography
too.
still matters to them. That is one thing. You notice Sankey kept mentioning geographically contiguous. Yes. Now, I will say, Indiana touches Kentucky.
I've thought about that too. I mean, you're starting to really stretch, and Sankey kind of alluded to this today. You're really starting to stretch the definition of southeastern.
Yeah. With
Texas and Oklahoma, and Texas A&M obviously already, but
right.
Yeah. It's you can still every state touches it, whereas the Big Ten has made a mockery of it.
North Carolina and Virginia would basically complete the region. Yeah. And I don't just mean the University ofs. I mean somebody from either state would complete the region in the footprint for the
North
SEC.
Carolina, though, basketball is such a it is what it is.
Yeah.
That, I mean, are they going to have to go with Duke? Even NC State and Wake Forest.
So I have asked this question, and I asked this of Ari. With Duke, did Mike Krzyzewski retire at precisely the wrong time?
But I mean, that's why Duke probably wants this to all settle out quickly so they can be locked in somewhere.
If Coach K were still at Duke, I feel like the Big Ten wants them. Maybe the SEC wants them. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure who wants them right now.
Yeah, because how much of the Duke brand is Duke and how much of it was intertwined with
Coach K? Because football's not giving you anything.
Yeah. I mean, but it's, Andy, it's still also sad. Like, we shouldn't be talking about North Carolina and Duke and the SEC. The Tobacco Road schools should be there with.
Well, you know what? If your alma mater hadn't bailed on them,
Maryland should still be in the ACC in my mind. Like,
that was one of the things that incited this, and it's so interesting because Maryland leaving freaked them out enough to do that grant of rights agreement. The reason they're locked in together is because of how scared they were after Maryland left that they get picked apart by the SEC and the Big Ten, and it is seemingly serving the purpose it was intended to serve, but just now pissing off all the schools.
I still say that, I don't know, we got to wrap this up, but I still say the way this ends up is we have this consolidation and then they break off basically to where they were before. Like, what should have happened in the ACC should have been Maryland staying.
Yeah.
And part of the reason Maryland left was they weren't playing Duke every year anymore. They were losing these historic old ACC rivals, and they were being paired in with Syracuse and Pitt and at Boston College. But, like, the ACC should have brought in, God help us, Rutgers and someone like that. And then you break off into a Northern ACC and a Southern, like, as in old ACC and new ACC, and then maybe in the Big Ten, they go get Oregon and Washington, and you have the Western Big Ten and the Eastern Big Ten.
Not the worst idea.
The SEC adds some schools, or they are the old, or the Western, as in SEC West, SEC East.
But there you go, thinking geographically again, Seth.
Geography still matters.
It matters to us. I'm not sure it matters to these guys
plane
that
travel
much.
And car travel have not sped up.
Yeah.
Do we have a European-style train system, high-speed rail? We should, but we don't. It still takes a while to get these places.
Maybe the new Big Ten will create that. Maybe that's the new research consortium in the Big Ten.
As I wrote the day the Big Ten thing was announced a couple weeks ago, if the only good thing that comes out of this is we get high-speed rail or like quicker plane flights, then maybe that'll be good.
Bullet train from Columbus to Los Angeles. Thank you, Buckeyes and Trojans.
Have you been to Europe?
I have.
How quick is it to get from
It's pretty nice.
Yeah. We can't do that in this country.
Well,
we should, for the sake of college football.
Come on, Big Ten.
They've got them. These are AAU research institutions.
Research it.
Let's
do it.
What is it good for? This does anyone even know what that AAU consortium does? What do they get together and talk about?
Very erudite things.
Yeah,
very important.
I am married to a Michigan graduate who is a professor, not at Michigan, but at Georgia. So I'm not a knuckle dragger, but get together and get high-speed rail done, Big Ten.
You caused this.
Lincoln Riley, how long for those road trips to Maryland and
Does
Rutgers?
Have to take the train to Rutgers
if
that happens?
It's not hard. Europe did it. We can do it.
All right. Seth Emerson, relitigating world wars and high-speed train travel. Summer is here, and we're spending more time outside and less time in the kitchen. You don't want to go to the grocery store. That's going to cut into your pool time. You also don't want to be stuck cutting vegetables because some other meal delivery service made you cook it yourself. What you need is Freshly. Don't waste your time inside shopping. Don't waste your time cooking. Take advantage of the good weather and Freshly's summer sale. And now you can get $125 off your first 5 orders. Other meal delivery options make you do all the work of prepping and cooking. Freshly comes ready to heat and eat in 3 minutes or less. Designed by nutritionists, prepared by chefs, then delivered right to your door. They've got it all. They've got chicken cordon bleu, wild-caught fish cake, creamy mushroom risotto, Thai green curbo, you name it, they got it. Everything I just mentioned, by the way, all that's gluten-free because that's what we have to get in our house. My wife has celiac. We don't want to worry that something's going to be contaminated. And with Freshly, we don't have to. They send it, and we don't have to worry about it. They always come through in a pinch, too, because the kids just love it. You rip it open, you heat it up, they're going to eat it up. Freshly is affordable and convenient, so skip the grocery shopping and the dirty dishes. Your meals arrive cooked and fresh every week. New meals are added weekly, so you're never stuck eating the same thing over and over. And now you can try Freshly for $125 off your first 5 orders. Make summer dinner stress-free with Freshly. Right now, you can get $125 across your first 5 orders at freshly.com/Andy22. That's $125 off across your first 5 orders. Freshly.com/Andy22. That's freshly.com/Andy22. Joined now by our LSU beat writer Brody Miller on the day at SEC Media Days when Brian Kelly made his debut. The last time he was at a Media Days, he was the Cincinnati head coach. Yep. There was a clam bake involved. It was the American.
Rhode Island, baby.
Or actually, it was the Big East.
Old Big East.
At the time. Yeah, I will say, having attended the clam bake.
Were you there?
Not that particular clam bake, but I have
more.
attended a clam bake in the past. And I got to say, the SEC thinks they have the best Media Day format.
Really?
Do you see clams? Do you see?
There are
do
no
you see a
clams.
beach?
I do think there's something where the SC Media Days need to lean into Southern food, like they need to, like maybe you bring one from each state, a little something. You know?
I like that. Well, Brian Kelly told us his favorite
Yes,
Louisiana delicacy is grilled oysters.
Yes. And crawfish etouffee was his number one.
Okay.
And he said then also the grilled oysters. Yeah.
I see the crawfish etouffee. I'm all for that.
Absolutely.
It's a tremendous
it's my top
dish.
3 for me.
And then you get is it redfish atchafalaya where they just put the etouffee on top of the redfish?
Anything atchafalaya is pretty much
that. That is the greatest thing in the world.
It really is. I've had to cut it out, but man, it is a go-to.
That is
my first 2 years in Baton Rouge when I was just gaining weight out of it was a lot of that.
It is incredible. So Brian Kelly handled himself. It's funny because everyone's how is he going to handle it?
Yeah.
It's not like the guy. He was the coach at Notre Dame.
Ding, ding, ding.
He had a little bit of media attention on him.
And like his whole thing, right, is like he's this politician kind of guy.
Right.
Like he's really good at schmoozing and working a room.
Yeah.
I think the thing that stood out for me today, though, was like, I feel like the theme of the day was Brian Kelly's letting himself be in on the joke.
Yes.
Because that's LSU people are used to Brian Kelly now. The other 13 schools and media groups, they want to make fun of Brian Kelly right now.
Right.
The dancing, the accent.
He even brought up the family thing. Somebody asked him to say it in his.
Did you notice though?
Louisiana accent.
Most important question of the day. In your best Southern accent, what's the favorite or best food you've had since you moved to Louisiana?
Well, understand now I have a Boston, Midwestern, Louisiana accent now. So, it's 3 dialects into one. So it's no longer family. I got like all kinds of stuff to throw at you.
Did you notice that he used family normally twice before that question? He like worked it in.
Oh, yeah.
There's no way that's unintentional.
Calculated.
And then then he gets asked about like saying something in a Southern accent, and then he of course jokes, "Well, I have a Boston, Midwestern, and Louisiana accent. It's not just going to be family. There's more I'm throwing
Also,
at you."
I appreciate that he said Louisiana accent because
Yes.
as someone who grew up in the more traditional version of the Deep South,
yeah.
Louisiana is not the South.
There are so many different
and
Southern accents.
And I think people in Louisiana would be happy to hear that. Like they don't consider themselves, especially Southern Louisiana.
You are
now,
absolutely right.
Monroe, pretty Southern.
Probably just like a Mississippi.
Like Northern Louisiana, very Southern. But yeah, it's funny how that works because and like Texans are the same way. Like they don't want to be called Southerners; they want to be called Texans.
Yes. And Louisiana is just its own country. Like
Yes.
I know Texas is its own country.
It's
most
a republic.
Yes, exactly. But Louisiana is just like it's a different world. I mean,
Yeah.
especially South Louisiana. I mean, there is no culture in America that feels like it's the same country. It's just a different place.
Yeah.
So Louisiana has the strangest accent. But it's tricky because even Louisiana, you got like your Cajun, your Ed Ogeron accents.
Right.
Then you got like your New Orleans Yat that pretty much sounds like any port accent,
Right.
New York, whatever. So yeah, it's a wild world.
It is, and Brian Kelly seems to be adjusting fine.
Yep.
First question out of the box about the quarterbacks, which you had to expect.
The first question addressed how he lost 3 games or something at Notre Dame.
Yes.
Like, that's sorry, not the point, but
Yeah, well, no.
coming at him.
They said you took over at Notre Dame and you had no experienced quarterback. But this is a really interesting quarterback room because you have Miles Brennan, who was supposed to be the heir apparent to Joe Burrow, gets hurt,
twice.
then gets hurt again
Yep.
going into last season and can't take part in the competition. You have Garrett Nussmeier, son of an NFL quarterback coach, son of a former SEC offensive coordinator. You have
Jaden
Daniels, who was a 3-year starter at Arizona State,
Yep.
who, when he announced his transfer, you're like, really?
That was my literal reaction.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then you have Walker Howard, who was the prized recruit.
5-star,
Brian
yeah.
Kelly danced. to
True,
get
that
him.
was the original dancing recruit. Yep.
So, I mean, it is a strange quarterback situation. How is he handling that going into camp? I mean, when are they going to cut the reps down on that?
It's still at this point even. I think it's going to narrow down soon. And he gave an answer today basically saying, like, spring was just installation. Nothing about spring was, like, catering it to a quarterback or figuring out what this guy does better. It was just installation. I think once fall camp comes, then you'll start seeing, like, hey, Jaden Daniels does well with this and not that. And that's when they really figure out what the offense is going to be, what these quarterbacks can be. But, yeah, it is a fascinating race because it's like each one is a yeah, but.
Right.
Each one is Jaden Daniels 2 years ago was looking like a first-round pick Heisman candidate.
Yeah.
And then he had 2
Did
years.
not look like that last year.
And even iffy the year before, right? He has passing issues. His accuracy even at LSU in practice hasn't looked great.
Yeah.
But he can run like no one else. Garrett Nussmeier might be the most talented of the 3, but he's raw and kind of, just gunslinger mentality you got to harness. And then Miles Brennan is the most trustworthy, the oldest, the guy you know what you're getting, but major durability concerns. So it's like, that's why I always explain to people, I think that's what the Jaden Daniels edition was. It wasn't just like, we need Jaden Daniels. It's, you're kind of playing, I always talk about percentages, but like, you're playing percentages because Brennan might get hurt. Nussmeier might not be ready. You just need to cover your bases.
Now, when we talked in May, you thought Nussmeier probably had the edge on winning the job. Do you still feel that way, or?
And I don't remember exactly what I said. I don't know if I felt he had the edge on winning, but I think he had the edge of how he looked. You know what I mean? Because
Okay,
it's not
yeah.
always the same, right?
Yeah.
There's a little politics.
But biggest skill set.
I think he had the most impressive spring, and he is so talented. But there's this part of me that just goes back to, it's just hard not to give it to the big name transfer, right? And part of me wonders, and I'm speculating at this point, but like, does Daniels get the job day one, but with a shorter leash? Because you got him here, and we all know.
But I don't feel like the market for him was, Jaden Daniels is transferring, everyone must get him. He was not the most sought-after quarterback recruit on the market. I mean, like Cam Ward from Incarnate Word, there was a bigger market for him.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. I think it's a good point. And the thing with Nussmeier is my gut says he still won't get it just because he's so young, because he's not going anywhere, because everything I've heard, he's prepared to stay, he gets it. So it's like, if you're just a coach playing the politics of it, it just makes sense not to. And by the way, Brennan, the funny thing about him with the narrative is like he's now being labeled the game manager, which like that's not what his thing was.
Say, the times I remember Miles Brennan starting, game manager was not the phrase I would use.
Big-armed guy throwing for 400 a game. So it's like, I think he's more than the game manager he's labeled as. So my gut thinks Brennan's the right pick.
Uh-huh.
My also gut says Daniels might get it. I don't know.
Interesting. That is very.
I want to tell you, my answer might change every week. It's actually even. Yeah.
Right, because it doesn't. If this had been a more traditional transfer from Jaden Daniels, I'd be like, oh, this is no question.
Yep.
They're going to at least try it with him. It's funny, though, because you know what colors my opinion of Brian Kelly in quarterback competitions? Was 2016.
Okay.
When they go into the season and they say in camp, Deshaun Kaiser and Malik Zaire looked equal.
Yeah.
And they're going to split snaps between them. And you get to the Texas game, and I remember covering that Texas game. That was the infamous Texas is back, baby, Joe Tessitore game.
I remember.
And you see Deshaun Kaiser, who's throwing laser beams all over the field. And then they bring in Zaire, and you're like, wait a second.
Yeah.
How in the world did they watch these two play and think they were equal?
Yeah. So, I mean, you've been around this much longer, but I just feel like so much of being a head coach now is managing your quarterback room and just keeping everybody happy enough to not leave just long enough past, especially now with the windows and all that.
Yeah.
It's tough. It's like, I forget where my brain was going with this. I had a great point. It's gone now. But, yeah, I think history says Kelly goes with the guy he trusts.
Yeah.
History says he'll go with the veteran more, which would mean Brennan.
Right.
And I think Brennan makes the most sense. He's got relationships with these receivers. He came back. As much as we're talking about, like,
Right,
Daniel,
he was in the portal.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the same things we're saying about Daniel is, like, he transferred, he's going to get the job. Brennan came back. Like, that means he also should get it. So I think my gut says Brennan, but it's hard to say, man.
Well, and then they've got an offensive line that they've got to put together in front of them.
Which, by the way, that's part of the case for Daniels, I think.
Yeah.
You could play that either way, I
he
guess.
can move pretty well.
It's like maybe you
yeah.
want someone who can neutralize it with his legs.
Yeah. And they've, that's the thing. LSU has had to do a lot in the transfer portal
15.
to fill spots.
Yep.
Which is unusual for them.
Yeah, 15. And you know what's even weirder about it? Yeah, a lot of them are going to start, obviously. But it felt like it was not even just transfers like Ole Miss, say, to, like, get your starters. It was almost like 15 transfers to build your infrastructure back because of how damaged that roster was when Ogeron left it. As you know, 39 players in the Texas Bowl were able to go.
Right.
It was like so much of the transfers are also just about, like, making sure you have a backup whatever.
It's almost like when you fire your coach halfway through the season, maybe it doesn't do the greatest things to your roster.
Exactly. So, yeah, but obviously 15 transfers. I think 5 of them are in the defensive backfield, 2 on the O-line. Like, they had to – but I think every position except tight end, which, funny enough, is the one they wanted most. But every single position basically added somebody because that's just what they had to do. And that's the weird thing with handicapping this team. It's just like in a vacuum, they are talented as anyone and could beat A&M. But they're also all transfers are young, and it's just like they might also slip up because there's just so much new.
Right, but there's also some elite players. Yep. Mason Smith, Keyshawn Butte, guys that most other teams don't have anybody like that.
Exactly. I mean, there's a scenario where there's 5 first-round picks or 3 at least. B.J. Ojolari might be second or third best edge rusher. Ollie Gay, all these guys. It's like the top of the roster is so good. And by the way, that's the same reason Ogeron was able to upset Florida or upset A&M.
Right.
It's that same thing, but those same cultural issues and infrastructure issues are why you slip up and lose to Auburn when you shouldn't have, or whatever, or Mississippi State. So that's what makes it so hard. I think I joked with you this in May. I'm giving up on confident predictions.
Yeah.
Because the last 2 years just broke my brain.
Oh, yeah.
I'm like,
every time they're supposed to win, they lose, and every time they're supposed to lose, they win.
That, and it's like they're the 5th most talented roster if you use any of those metrics in the country. They're going to go 9-3, right? Nope. So I'm just giving up, but I just feel like 8-4 is that sweet spot because I think they do get 1 or 2 huge upsets, and I think they lose to like a Mississippi State or something.
It is bizarre. I can't wait to see it, though, because they've become the most interesting team in the country.
They really are up there, yeah.
Just because they can, and you've seen them play like tight against Alabama when they have no business doing that. When they go to Gainesville, they win the game in the fog with the thrown shoe and whatnot. but it's crazy.
And also we can't rule out and I don't know the answer to this. I'm not but how much better are they going to be just by removing some of the, and I don't want to be too harsh, chaos, for lack of a better word, just the chaos of the Ogeron era,
right.
the
and
little things that you miss that like a Kelly staff doesn't miss. I don't know.
Well, and that is the reason behind the hire.
Absolutely.
Is consistency, whether it was Grand Valley State, Central Michigan, Cincinnati, Notre Dame. You kind of got the same thing, just at different levels.
I know. I even wrote today in my thing, it's like, so much of everyone's attention about the Kelly hire is rooted in how, the culture changed, the difference. Ogeron and Miles were these eccentric characters, and it's like, yeah, but that's the same reason they're hiring Kelly, is that he's not like them.
Right.
It's like, they won, yes, everyone talks about won 3 titles with 3 different coaches, absolutely. But I think anyone would tell you they won 3 titles off a system that was built on the infrastructure of Saban.
Right.
It was even everything
same
Ogeron.
Strength coach, same
trainer.
Yeah.
Just, the support staff was almost identical. Yes. Everything was the culture he built, even down to how they handled media. Yeah. And I think this is about, hey, maybe that ran out. You can't keep the exact same system forever. You need the next another.
Ask USC trying to recapture the Pete Carroll era over and over and over again.
So much of it is just like we need another Saban. Not that you're comparing him to Saban, but another process guy who knows how to build an infrastructure. Because if you just won 2 titles with coaches we might not think are that great, with using the leftovers of the Saban era, what can you do if you have someone who knows what they're doing?
It's going to be fascinating to watch. We have another big question that we need to tackle,
Brody.
Here we go. For those of you who are not watching the YouTube video, Brody has grown himself a mustache. And,
I have, haven't I?
I need to know when do you start at the police academy?
I'm trying to think what I want my persona to be, because everyone thinks it's a Top Gun thing. It's not a Top Gun thing.
No, I'm not saying talk to me, Goose. I said that when I saw Peter Burns from the SEC Network.
I think mine is similar to Miles Tellery. It's not a Goose level.
There you go.
I'm not saying I'm going for that.
Yeah.
But I like to believe I guess it's kind of a hipster vibe, you know? Like,
Oh, it's definitely a hipster vibe with you. But I will tell you, you look like a highway patrolman. Like,
I don't think so, because I have the biggest baby face. No.
I want you to try these on.
Did you just buy these for this bit?
No. I have multiple pairs of aviators. Oh, my God. I want you to say this. Repeat after me. Son, do you know why I pulled you over?
Son, do you know why we pulled you over?
Yeah, I mean,
See, the only thing, first off,
I feel
with
like
the
you should be
glasses is-
chugging syrup in Super Troopers right
I'm not
now.
disagreeing with the glasses, but I think the thing you're leaving out, though, is nothing about me looks like a cop. I have the biggest baby face
Oh,
ever.
no, you look like a total cop now.
Well, with the glasses, I do not look like a cop with the mustache.
Now, you need some skinny jeans.
Yes.
Then you take the cop vibe away. I think part of it is you're dressed up a little bit for this occasion, so you got a jacket
I had a
on.
friend put it
You
as
look like a cop who has gone to court to testify to make sure that the ticket he wrote gets prosecuted
I had one
properly.
person say I look like a politics like communication staffer who's at the pool trying to network.
Oh yeah, you
Like,
were definitely the cool comms
I'm like on Veep.
guy.
Yeah,
You're-
like I'm not
You're
competent.
not Mike. You're not Mike from
I'm not
Veep.
quite. Well, he does have
No.
a stash, doesn't he?
He does,
But yeah, like I'm there to like I'm working, but I'm schmoozing.
you
I'm
are
networking.
you
Yeah.
are more of a God. Why am I blanking on the name? Not-
Dan Egan.
Yeah, Dan. You're more of a Dan
I'm
Egan.
not as much of a jerk, probably, but
No,
yeah.
definitely not. But
Yeah,
but I can see you just attached to your phone all the time.
I am. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I'm trying. Yeah. I mean, I just always wanted one my whole life, and I just can't really grow facial hair.
Part of this is jealousy that I can't grow one.
Oh, I couldn't. First off, this isn't a great stash. Like, let's be real here.
Yeah.
But two, like, yeah, I've just always wanted one. Could never grow a beard. Finally, kind of grew a beard this summer, and then I shaved it as like a bit. Walk out of the shower, and it's like this. It's like in Ocean's 13 when like Brad Pitt's like the nose plays. That
Yeah.
like.
Oh, yeah.
She was like, it plays, and I'm like, if you approve, I am keeping this. And then And then I went to like an interview with like the new LSU basketball coach, and I'm like, this. And he's like, the stash works. And I'm like, if I got through the gauntlet, we're in. And then, by the way, I'm walking up here.
Yep.
Eli Drinkwitz is walking by me and yells, nice stash.
Nice.
I don't know if it's sarcastic. He's a sarcastic
Could
man.
Could be.
So my whole night's going to be anxiety about that.
But basically, so the girlfriend says it plays.
That's all
like
that matters.
the opposite. So Aaron Feld, the Miami strength coach, who's been at Oregon and was at Georgia before that, he's got the big handlebar mustache.
Oh.
He actually decided to keep it because his wife hated it.
Oh, okay. See, that wouldn't work in my household. I would lose, but I respect the heck out of that. I think the thing is, I would love to have Burns' stash. Have you seen Peter Burns'?
I did.
That's a
I
great
said,
stash.
"Talk to me, Goose." The second I saw
That's
it.
a goose stash.
Yeah,
That is
yeah.
a well-built, but not too much, because you don't want too much. You don't want it to be like bushy.
It's interesting because it's a bold choice to go just mustache. Beards are popular these days. Goatees
Yeah.
are popular these days.
I think I look like a dirtbag with a beard, with a stash.
But not a dirtbag with a stash.
I don't think so.
You look like a guy. You look like a guy who's arresting some perps.
I look like a guy who like you think's the bad guy, and then he like actually at the end of the movie is like,
Oh, yeah,
he had your back the whole
that's the good
time.
guy.
You know, like
Yeah.
I think that's who I look
Well,
like.
listen. If I see you with a radar gun, I will definitely slow
I know
down.
we need to get a screenshot of me with the glasses. Just
What do you think the thumbnail of this episode's going to be?
Shoot.
I love that you think I bought those for the bit. We don't have that kind of budget on this show.
I mean, you
But-
are great at your job. I'm like, did he do that? Really? Is there a mall nearby?
I mean, I might when I was deciding which sunglasses to bring on this trip,
Like, is someone going to bring a stash?
I might have thought about it.
I love
just
it.
a little
That's
bit.
why you're the
So,
best. Yeah.
It's been fun.
Wait, you never given like your review. You can
Of
be
the
honest.
stash?
You can say it's bad. I will not be.
I
hurt.
don't think it's. You look like a cop. You look like a highway patrolman.
Which I guess means it passes.
Yes. Yes.
It's a real stash.
It definitely looks like a real stash.
That's all I need.
Yeah.
That's
No.
all
You
I need.
listen. In the aviators, listen. If you pulled me over, I would not even try to talk my way out of the ticket.
Wow, it's like threatening or
No, it's
authoritative.
just authoritative.
Is it actually? Because I do. My hope was.
It's like
I'm sorry that we're
you
spending
will
this
respect
much.
my authority.
I'm sorry that we're spending this much on the stash, but
Yeah,
still.
no. This is all we needed to
it's-
talk about the whole
but,
time.
like, the goal was I have such a baby face that I also hoped like this would make me look a little more like. Yeah. So the question is, what would my stash like go in SEC play?
Your stash would be a solid 5-3 in SEC play.
That is a win.
If you can fill that middle in, I think we're talking 7-1.
Recruits are talking. All right.
There you go.
Appreciate it.
Brody Miller, it's been a pleasure.